Next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer? Here it is.
Dum 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 dum.
And it's the dumbest bill in America, and it is Big Oil Windfall Taxes Act. That's a long one, I know. It's called Big Oil Windfall Taxes Act. So what is that? Well, the Big Oil Windfall Taxes Act is basically saying that the oil companies throughout the planet are actually gouging people on prices, and they're making all this money, and that's the reason why prices are high at the pump. Folks, we can't make this stuff up, but we are going to clarify the record here on Mark the Millennials. So CNBC host on CNBC, that's a business channel for all those that don't know, Representative Jan Schakowsky was on there, and she is an anti-fracking person. And so CNBC host Joe Kernan confronted the Illinois Representative Jan Schakowsky on her vote to ban fracking. By the way, she also banned exports of natural gas as well. At least she voted for that. She wanted to get rid of all natural gas, which basically means all gas and all oil. Now, of course, she's receiving all of this heat back home. And she's receiving the heat back home because people are like, Congresswoman, I can't afford to fill up my car with gasoline. What gives? So if you want to see the ultimate two-step by a Democrat, here is Jan Schakowsky being grilled on CNBC about her desire to ban fracking. We have that clip, and here it is.
Many members of Congress, 26 members of the House, I don't know if you're one of them, voted to try to a bill to ban fracking as well as oil and natural gas exports. Were you one of the 26 House Democrats that voted to ban fracking as well as oil and gas production?
Look, the question is what are the oil companies doing? Yes, I am against fracking. I think it's a real problem.
Did you vote yes on that?
The question is that the oil companies made a decision, rather, in this crisis right now, to raise the cost, to gouge the consumers.
So, Brian, thoughts on this?
It's always a diversionary tactic, right? They always have to find some villain to blame instead of themselves because they've created this problem. And when she's talking about fracking, she goes, it's a big problem. Well, nobody wants to define what the problem is because nobody really understands how clean of an exploration of fracking really is for us to go get natural gas, because we are the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. It is one of the cleanest energies we produce. We can export it. And if we export it, we can make it extremely cheap for ourselves, and we can power our houses, we can power our energy grids. She can hate it all she wants, but she's got no evidence to back up that fracking has ever caused a single problem, except for Sandra Bullock making some stupid movie in the 90s where it hurt the oil. I mean, it hurt the water. It hurt the water.
The water's on fire.
Yeah, the water's on fire. Meanwhile, production in this country has gone up so much since we started to explore our own oil sources, our own natural gas sources, instead of relying...
It's a 50% tax. So the second that the oil company extracts the oil, there's a 50% tax levied by the federal government on that oil. That's what they want to do with this bill. I'm just curious, what's that going to do to the price of gasoline at the pump, Matt?
I just love when reality smacks these people in the face. I mean... Look, you're telling me if you ban something or you excessively tax it, you'll get less of it. I mean, that's a revolutionary thought there. I mean, they all must have went to school with AOC. That's the only thing I can come up with because their policies are just they're pathetic at this point.
So here's what's really interesting about this. This is why we're covering this podcast, listeners, because you've heard other dumbest bills in America similar to this, but this is a new bill, and it's from Jan Schakowsky and Ro Khanna and a total of 26 Democrats who want to, and perhaps more, but 26 for sure, who want to ban everything that has to do with fossil fuels and put a massive tax on it. So now they're getting all of this heat back home. All right, the heat being from the constituents, and the constituents are saying, man, this is like crazy. Why are you doing this? And so Ro Khanna, okay, he's a congressman, went on Neil Cavuto. You're going to love these clips, okay? I'm going to love these because he's a California congressman. He's in one of the most liberal districts in the country, and he's getting hammered back home. Here is Ro Khanna having an exchange with Neil Cavuto. We had the first of 3 clips. Here it is.
Congressman, great to see you. I know you're saying that, the oil companies could be doing more to help the situation we're having with gasoline by taxing their profits on this. Why do that? Why not just allow more exploration?
Well, first of all, I think we need an increase in short-term production. The president has released 180 million barrels, and I've said let's have a floor price to buy that back, which would increase production. But also, these oil companies have $44 billion in stock buybacks, and I'm saying if they continue to charge American gas $6, $7 at the pump, then they should be taxed on those.
So that's Ro Khanna is like doing the 2-step. It's like, well, wait a minute. It's really all about the oil companies. That's why prices are really high at the pump. What he forgets is the Biden administration and Ro Khanna himself want to cancel gasoline. When you want to do that, and that is the policy of the United States Congress and of the president of the United States, you know what happens? The oil companies don't invest in new exploration. And Ro Khanna thinks you can just switch a button, like when you go into the kitchen and you turn the lights on, that's how it works with oil. No, Brian, does it?
No, and when he's talking about trying to increase production by taxing something more, you're going to get less of it. You're never going to get more of it. And it just goes to show the ignorance of how a free market works. And they always want to create this boogeyman and say, look at him, it's his fault. Knowing clear well that maybe he doesn't know. Maybe he is that ignorant that he doesn't understand how
he knows exactly what he's doing. And the thing is, Ro Khanna is really smart. He knows what he's doing is ultimately going to bankrupt the oil companies, and it will probably in the process bankrupt the American people. He knows he's doing it. The question is, why would you knowingly, when you're a really smart person, do it? Why would you knowingly do this?
Because the ends justify the means, right?
And the ends being what?
They want to do away with all fossil fuels altogether.
Resulting in basically a society that goes back 200 years in terms of your standard of living. But why would you do that, Matt? Why would you willingly do this to the people?
They hate this country. They feel that the country is founding on ill-gotten gains. And really, they just are out to destroy it. And you can say this guy is smart, but obviously he's a smart central planner. Right. And this is why every central planning government has eventually failed, because they can't do it. I haven't met a politician yet, and we're all politicians to some degree on the show right now, but I haven't met a single one that I want to make decisions for me.
No, that's for sure.
I mean, not a single one. And it's troublesome.
So here's another clip of Ro Khanna. You're going to love this exchange with Neil Cavuto. Folks, Neil Cavuto lights him up because Ro Khanna is smart enough to know what he's doing. He's literally crushing the economy of the United States of America and of every single citizen out there. Here's the clip.
Why limit it to just them, Congressman? What if food prices go up? Do you go after Cargill? Do you go after Philip Morris and all of this because they're making money in a higher environment, not as much money as you would think, given that run-up? But if you're going to go after a company and its profits when prices are high, why don't you extend that to everybody? If laptop prices rise, go after Apple or Dell. Why limit it to just the oil guys?
Well, everyone needs gas, and this is hurting the working class the most.
Everyone needs food as well. So why not go after
absolutely. Them? If they were price gouging at the same level and having $40 billion in
Are you saying you have proof that they're price gouging, Congressman?
Well, I have proof that they are putting a lot of their money into stock buybacks, and I have proof that they are making record profits.
Is that evil to do? Because there are a lot of people in your district who invest in oil companies and enjoy those dividends and get something out of that. It's not just for the hoi polloi, right?
I agree with that, and they would have to be paying this tax as well, obviously, if they were investors in my district. I guess here...
So that's Neil Cavuto saying to Ro Khanna, you have a big oil windfall taxes act bill. You want to tax them at 50% because you're saying they're making too much money, because you're blaming them. You're trying to divert attention, as you said, Brian, to the big oil versus, of course, the fact that the policy of the Democrat Party are canceling them. He's like, Neil Cavuto is like, well, why wouldn't you just tax the big food people because food prices are increasing because of energy prices.
because they've always wanted to pick the winners and the losers, right? It's who falls in line with them, who believes in who's going to keep them in power. And we want to decide who wins, who loses. They don't like big oil. They want to put them out of business. They're just starting to feel the heat because average American says, well, we still need to drive our cars and we still need natural gas to heat our homes or to cool our houses. And you're putting a tremendous financial burden on us. Even the people on the far left are like, this is out of control, but he wants to sit on his laurels and say, no, I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm going to decide which companies survive and which companies we put out of business. And that's his whole belief system.
Exactly. Matt.
Well, I mean, you're exactly right, Brian. I mean, this is where they're at, where they're going to pick the winners and losers. And there's just not a real good excuse for it. But I do love this guy. I mean, he's like a deer in the headlights. Talking about somebody that hasn't maybe ever had a single Republican friend or maybe a conversation with somebody else. I mean, he's just like, yeah, we're just gonna ban this. So it's like, well, why wouldn't you ban other things? Well, because I like them. I mean, that's when it comes down to it.
And every time you talk to these woke Democrats like Ro Khanna and you say, well, how else would I drive? He's like, well, buy a Tesla. It's, well, here's the problem. Electricity prices in California are through the roof because you're canceling natural gas and so forth. And like, oh, well, that's not my problem. I want to save the planet. And it's just unbelievable. So we have the final clip in this series. Again, an exchange between Neil Cavuto and Ro Khanna. You're going to love it. Here it is.
In the meantime, we're talking to Venezuela and for a while Iran to rely on that. And if you're concerned about clean energy, relying on either of those kingdoms and countries for oil, which is among the dirtiest refined product on the planet, then it just doesn't make sense. The party's position just doesn't seem consistent.
Well, Neil, I agree with you. This is why we should have been investing in renewable energy years ago so we wouldn't be dependent on Iran, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia. And this is why
we just only recently got very dependent on that. That's a very recent phenomenon.
But certainly you would acknowledge, Neil, that none of President Biden's policies of the last year are responsible for that. You yourself said we're at the highest production. And if you ask anyone in the oil industry, they'll say it's Wall Street.
When he stopped Keystone, and you know oil is priced as supply and demand, that includes future supply and demand, and that was cut off. It sent a message on the first day of his administration, and he's verbalized this himself, that he's not too keen on all of this. That tells anyone invested in this that, look, opportunities are going to be few and far between. Right?
So that's now you know the messaging, ladies and gentlemen out there in podcast land. You hear the Democrats saying, it's not Joe Biden's fault. It's not our fault that prices are through the roof. That's why we have a big oil windfall taxes act to charge those terrible oil companies a 50% tax because they are just gouging you. And then you have Neil Cavuto saying, well, before President Biden became president, everything was fine. So obviously it's policy driven. Go ahead.
And that's one of the greatest accomplishments, I believe, in Donald Trump's 4 years was to make us energy independent because people were always talking about it, but we never did it. And he did it in less than 2 years. And you saw gas prices went down, energy prices went down. And the one thing about energy prices is we all rely on them. Unless you live in tent city, you're still relying on the public's energy, but we all need energy to be productive, to live our lives, to save lives. I mean, you talk about the hospital systems and all the energy that they need in order to operate in all of our critical infrastructure. It all runs off of energy. And he talks about renewable energy like we just don't have the guts to do it. But if you guys remember when Barack Obama went into place, do you remember Solyndra? You remember there was like 38 companies.
They all went bankrupt.
They all went bankrupt. And we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. They were literally giving hundreds of millions of dollars. Can you go please produce some wind energy or some solar energy? And you know what happened? They couldn't figure it out until this day. We only get less than 9% of our energy comes from solar or wind. They can wish it all they want.
Matt, the final word. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, they're
final word on Big Oil Windfall Taxes Act.
Well, they're trying to legislate clean energy. And look, it's just a mistake. It's not ready for prime time. And talking about just slamming your junk in the door on this. I mean, if you go back and look 30 years ago, I mean, right now, America pretty much has the same carbon output as we did back in the 90s. And one reason for that, it has because of fracking and removing like coal, electric plants.
Catalytic converters.
Right, with natural gas and replacing that. And while we're on the path of the water certainly more clean, the air is more clean, they want to make the decision for you. They want to control your life. They're willing to be the ones that push the buttons of this utopia. And look, it's really troublesome, and it's not working out for the average American.
Go, Brian.
And it's a big lie. It is a big lie. They want to tell you that things have gotten worse, but they've actually gotten better. Technology and innovation has brought us so much further in clean energy. Look, we're Republicans. We believe in clean air. We believe in clean water. We believe
in all of the above and let them all compete. And I agree, by the way, with the Democrats saying let's not subsidize big oil. I don't think they should be subsidized. But here's the thing. They're not subsidized at the state level, at least in our state at all. The only people that are subsidized are, of course, the wind and solar.
But we also realize that somebody like Elon Musk in the private sector has done more for the environment than any government program has been set up.
That's true. And that's the last word. And that's the dumbest bill in America. And that's it from Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins, and our guests, Matt Morgan and Brian Chisholm. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, Truth Social, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.